Okay, well, thank you for coming. I know some of you are hungry and thirsty, and so I won't take up much of your time. I'm not a technical expert, so if you do have any technical questions, I can take them down and get you to the right person or get an answer back with you. Okay, so my name is Douglas DeMaio. I work for openSUSE. I've been there for about a year. I'm fairly new to Linux. I have a background in military. And my wife's German, so I don't have much of a sense of humor, so bear with me. All right. So this is a basic overview of what we'll talk about today with openQA. openSUSE, if you're unfamiliar with it, is a community project that's sponsored by SUSE. It has 2 distributions, and it has multiple tools. A lot of people will ask, what is the difference between SUSE and openSUSE? openSUSE is the community version, and SUSE is the enterprise version. So, why automated testing? Well, the answer should be fairly obvious, right? Maybe that's why there's not too many people in here. But, we're talking about innovation, we're talking about progress, we're talking about driving technology forward. So, this is just a brief summary of the changes that have taken place using openQA in the past 2 years. You can see how many changes have taken place in SLE 12. You're talking 600,000 packages added and nearly 2,080 removed, right? Same with openSUSE 13.2. Very similar numbers there. And then our latest release, openSUSE Leap 42.1, also with very similar numbers. Some might ask, what's the difference between jumping from 13.2 to 42.1? I kind of just want to clarify that because I'm sure some of you might be thinking why that happened. So SUSE, or openSUSE, in its latest release, used a lot of source code from SUSE Linux Enterprise 12, Service Pack 1, and they used that as sort of the base, and then community built packages on top of that. So it's a little different than CentOS. It's more dynamic. There's more of an effort from community in that base. And SUSE has a long history of starting something new with 42, reference to the meaning of life, yeah? So YAST was, its first version was 0.42, and SUSE's first version, technically, was that they released was 4.2. So I hope that answers the questions that you might have in your mind. All right. So, yeah, change is good, right? Change is good because, you fix security issues, or you enhance performance, you fix bugs. You have newer hardware that you can accommodate, newer features. Upstream is very fast-paced, and so you want to be moving just as fast as them. But change is also bad, right? So you get new bugs, and you get new security issues. You get new functionality. Some people understand change, some people can adapt, others sort of live in the past, right? Okay, so automated testing helps openSUSE develop fast, and you will see that in the slides that come a little bit later with Tumbleweed. I'll give you some basic numbers, and you can see how fast we're actually moving with upstream. What are the problems with other testing tools? So how many of you are actually using some testing tools that are out there right now? Solarium, anyone? Solarium, okay. Cucumber? No? Jenkins? I hear a lot of, okay, Jenkins. I heard a lot of people use that. So what are some of the issues? Yeah, well, this is just a basic list of it, right? So some don't render well, some are entirely web interface, some focus strictly on packages. They lack a GUI. Or, really, there's nothing out there that compares to openQA. So, openQA to the rescue, huh? A little bit of background. This started out as a Hack Week project in 2009 by a guy by the name of Bernhard Wiedemann, and it's developed over time. That was something that they continually focused on the Hack Weeks that followed. So we eventually got to a point where we could start to integrate it. And when we looked at integrating it, was sort of the DevOps issue and discussion that the person in here previously was talking about. Is it's really a cultural change, right? So you need to look at, I guess at least with openSUSE, we looked across the board. We saw how our processes worked. And we thought, well, how can we integrate this in? And so that's what we've done is we've taken this tool that we've developed and added it to create and enhance our DevOps. This is sort of an overview. So testing, testing, testing. You'll see the submission come in, gets an automatic review, goes through pre-integration tests, manual reviews, and then it goes into what we call factory. And within factory, you're looking at multiple staging levels of tests. So this is where some of our processes have been enhanced. There's a huge flow chart in my coworker's office, and if you look at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, I guess, if you don't really know the whole thing, but you have the yes/no answers, and it all kind of cycles around, and you could start it, or you could be at the very end and get a no, and it'll shift all the way back to the very beginning to run through that process. But as you go through some of these testing phases where we use openQA and within factory in certain staging areas, when we get to where we can get to the final test and everything's worked out, and it gets QA approved, you get a release. Or an alpha or a beta, or whatever you want to say, whatever point you're at in your development cycle. So a little bit of overview is about openQA. It doesn't really touch the software. It really acts like someone is actually doing the testing manually. And so this is a great benefit. You're talking about opening up all different programs. You're talking about testing the console, a variety of things. You can create a test with openQA to basically do what you want. So it's an installation testing. It's from beginning to end, but really, when it hits a failure, it doesn't need to go forward, right? So it just stops right there. However, you could potentially, if you wanted to, in the scripting, ask it to continue if you'd like. So it gives you a graphical interface. You can see on the left there, you get the green, means it's passed and it works on to the next level, right? One thing I would point out with this, so in your development process, when we have something like our rolling release tumbleweed, you get a lot of version changes, right? So you might wonder, how do you account for that in your testing scenarios? Well, basically you have these green boxes that you can focus on in certain areas that you say, hey, I need this to be 100%. That this area cannot change. However, you have version numbers that might change. You can give a percentage of acceptance of change. So you can account for those little things that would happen. And obviously, if you're doing routine cycles, right, you know, those little things would matter. And so that was thought of. So. All right, so you can see the script running too. That's another good thing. Below this, if you actually go to the openQA website, you can track a live test that's taking place. You'll see a little yellow button. And if you click on that, you can actually see it moving and see it, the test taking place, and see the script below it and how it's actually being tested. Yeah, move on. So this screen, as I said, I'm not a technician, so to some of you, you might understand what this is, but this is supposed to be, from what I understand, an output of the previous screen. So I'll give you a chance to look at that. Good. Move forward. So this is sort of the architecture, the way it's set up. We have various workers. It goes into a pool, and it gets, I guess it's call up and sort of waits in line, because you'll have multiple tests taking place, and they're happening every day. I mean, there's tests every day going on over the day, over the night, and they all kind of wait in a queue, and then eventually, when it's their time, they go through testing. And you can adjust that too, to if you need something that you need to rush through, you can, I guess, subvert the other ones and go to the top of the list if that is what you need to do. So it gives you a quick emulator. It supports, so with ours, it supports multiple architectures, which is very helpful for a lot of people, right? Because they're working on several different architectures, or we're working with so many people. So we have to make sure that our stuff is running on a variety of hardware. And it does run on bare metal. So most of it is tested in a VM, but you can do it on bare metal. Right? This is sort of the dashboard that you have from it, where you can see all your tests. And it basically, this is in the development cycle of a distribution. You could see that, I guess years past, right? You get 6-month development cycle, fairly quick at that time, I guess. But you might have introduced something into it as you're building your distribution, and you're toward the end of it, and then you introduce something else in there, and then you find some bug or some issue, and in the past it was kind of difficult, because you go, well, where did this happen? You know, it might have happened like 4 months ago, and you got to track and go back to all that. Well, the benefit is, you get to keep all of this information in your servers. You have all that data. You can go back. You can figure it out fairly quickly if you need to. But a lot of the testing, you'll see it right away. You'll see the issues right away. So there's a failure that you can see right there on the left. You'll get that red check mark, and basically it stops from there. Okay. So who's using openQA? Well, obviously, openSUSE is using it. We use it for Tumbleweed. And how many people here are familiar with Tumbleweed? How many people here are familiar with Rawhide? Okay. So Tumbleweed is what some of the people that I work with believe is actually the future of Linux distributions, and that is that the latest software is being tested and coming out very quickly. So it's the latest packages, the latest applications. It's just, that's what Tumbleweed is. You have the latest and greatest, and it's stable and it's tested, and that's the most important thing that I'd like you to take away from that idea of Tumbleweed. It's tested. A lot of people will compare it to Arch, and Arch is good, but you have to compile Arch, right? And there's a lot of stuff you have to do. With Tumbleweed, you don't. Tumbleweed, you get snapshots, and it's tested, and it works. We used it in Leap. and that was quite a difficult thing, right, to bring two source codes together. But we used it for validation testing, system testing. SUSE is using it. They're using it for SUSE Linux Enterprise 12. They used it for 11, I believe. 11.4 was their first one. They actually started using it a little bit. And Red Hat's using it. The person who wrote this, who's our QA engineer, Richard Brown, and the openSUSE chairman, one day he was a little bored. And so he thought, well, let me see how easy this is to make a test. And so he wrote a test for Fedora. And in doing that test, or in writing that test and creating it, he ran it with Fedora. And he didn't do it to kind of, I guess what's the word? Just not be confrontational. He didn't do it with any intention like that. He wanted to take a distribution he knew but not so well and just write something for him, and he did. And in that test, it found some bugs that Fedora had. And of course, he knew the release manager for Fedora, and he said, hey, I just wrote this for you. I don't know if you want to take a look at it. And the release manager was very thankful, and he said, yeah, okay, well. So they started talking about it, and they started collaborating, and now you have Red Hat using it. And Red Hat is using it, and they're contributing back to it, which is the most important, right? Because if openSUSE has some issues and Fedora has issues, you have certain bugs. Well, in a lot of ways, right? They relate. So we're kind of working together, and we're helping each other, and I think that's a positive, good news story for the community and for Linux. So. And you can see right there in the bottom there, that's the release manager. And I took this screenshot just a couple hours ago, but they used it 5 days ago, and they're using it with Rawhide. That you might see that progress develop a little bit further based on them, how they integrate it into their processes. I don't think they're there yet, but I'm sure they will get there soon. So, openQA and Leap. I briefly explained a little bit about this earlier. You're taking source code from SUSE Linux Enterprise, and then what we had in openSUSE is sort of the development going forward, and really bringing those two together. It went through extensive integration challenges, right? And you're looking at over 25 different installation upgrade scenarios. And openQA allowed us to do that. You have an openQA engineer, he's twice as productive, right? He's running his tests, he's doing his manual testing. openQA is just a really, really beneficial for everyone. And as I mentioned earlier, we have it in our processes. It is an integral part to openSUSE development. And really, it's allowed us to be very fast in our releases. So the very bottom there, testing. New tumbleweed releases, as I said, a rolling release. They're expected about one every 2 or 3 days. When we have the building of our regular release, it kind of slows down, right? Because areas are focused in other places. But it still does move forward during that time. It's just we have to dedicate more resources to the development of our regular release. So here's an example of a quiet week for Tumbleweed. This was something, I guess this happened back in April or something like that. So they had 3 snapshots, 146 package updates, 15 new packages on the DVD. And we're also removing some of those packages, right? So we're cleaning up after ourselves. And 1 new kernel. all tested in 118 different installation and upgrades. This next one is a little more interesting, right? So, and this is what we're talking about with development. You have 5 snapshots, 298 package updates, 47 new packages on the DVD, 42 packages removed, 2 new kernels. And it was sort of just another week, as someone described it when they did this. And this was back in spring, but we did the same thing last week. So we had 5 snapshots within Tumbleweed last week. Yes. I'm not exactly sure on that number. I mean, I could explain the top ones, but that one, I'm not exactly sure. Do you know, George? Do you know anything about? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the first time they started using openQA, SUSE did, was in SLE 11 SP4. And they integrated that into their later processes with SLE 12, which was released last year, and SLE SP1, which was just recently released. So how you incorporate it into is you do it with some pre-validation and staging. So, and every part, I guess, of the development, you're kind of looking at openQA and you're using it to your advantage. So it's inside our processes, is inside SUSE's processes, and they don't. With SUSE, they don't really show their stuff. It's sort of hidden in the back. But with openSUSE, we do make those tests available for everyone. So over 100 different validation scenario tests. I would think that would kind of be along the same lines as your question earlier. We're using it for alphas, betas, different scenarios. Matter of fact, when we released Leap, I think we just went straight to a beta. I think that's what we did. And you can use it for post-validation as well. So, go back, openQA and U. So if you're thinking about using openQA, here's some information for you on how you can either contribute or learn about it or contact someone that can help. So the documentation's available, the bug reporting is available at that website, and it's located. The main project is located on GitHub. As I mentioned earlier, openSUSE is transparent. They're making all their tests publicly available for everyone, so everyone can see it. And the best way to start, think about how you would describe the steps for someone else to do it. So if you're writing a test, you want to think, well, how am I going to use this, right? And so you want to write those steps down. Assume that person doesn't know how to do anything, and then use those steps to help create your test code. write the test code for each step, and you also want to think about what you can do with openQA to enhance or develop your processes to aid with DevOps transformation, if that's something that you're here and thinking about with this presentation. This is some basic background, sort of, I guess, advisement, whatnot. Yeah, organization. It's a British guy that did this, so there's no Z in it. Yeah, so I just left it the way it was. I don't know if that's necessary or not. And here are some other coding actions for you, I guess. Here's a example test console. It's for the console. This next one's for the graphic. And so as we're looking at that, we see how we're using openQA with their distributions, but it has a lot more potential than that, right? So here are some of the things that we are actually looking at doing. The thoughts are already there, but they're actually working toward this, right? And my understanding is that possibly they might be looking at salt stack too. So and that was pretty much all I had for this presentation. If you want to find out more, you can go to that website, and you can contact either Richard Brown at SUSE.com or hop on the IRC openSUSE Factory, and all those guys will be able to answer any question you have pretty much right away. They're on there all the time, and they'll get back with you on any sort of help you would need. Richard's very helpful. He can answer any questions you have. He does it as his day job. So, what's that? He's the guy that made the slides. And yeah, he's the British guy. The slides. No, I don't think they are. I did send them to scale, but I did make just a couple of changes, not much. I mean, the content is for what he did was there. So, yeah. So, does anyone have any questions about openQA? Sure. Is it being used to test anything other than the installations? I believe it is. I think that was actually in the slide. Let me see if I can find that. I did see that somewhere. You can use it to test. You can use it to test network cards. You can use it for basically a lot of different things. Let's see. Virtual machine. OpenCV. Yeah. Let's start. Bring that up. To read the actual screen output and compare the predefined needles? That isn't the question. Okay. Okay. I couldn't answer that question for you. I wouldn't be able to. Well, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't make a test for that. I mean, if it's, I can't tell you if we do that, but judging from what I can see in the documentation and the way that they've discussed it, it's you can test for pretty much anything you want. It's just a matter of actually writing it, right? And that's brings up a valid point if they hadn't thought about that, but I'm sure they probably have. But who knows? Yeah, I can pull up IRC and ask if they would know that. I mean, probably everyone would on that. Um, P- yeah. Uh, oh, that's actually a test. Sorry. Um, yeah, that just. No, that was something I had running in the room before people showed up, so they could actually zone out or look at it. It wasn't. There was nothing. Uh, no, no intention behind that other than to just give them something to look at, rather than. It is, yeah. Did you want to see it? No. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if it would be in doc. Again, I'm not a technical expert. I'll go to the documentation and see if there's anything that would be. Let's see, it contains all the information needed to install and set up tools. QA starter guide. General operation. It's probably in that starter guide, I would think. Right, so. I mean, I couldn't really tell you. I know we have our security team, so that I know they look at stuff. As far as like incorporating security tests in it, I don't really see anything. But it's an interesting thing to bring up, and I can ask Richard and see. I give you my card. You can reach out to me, and I mean that's a good idea, right? Why not? I've heard of it. Uh huh. Uh huh. Okay. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. That's. I'm sure that would. I'm sure bringing it up would probably make someone do that. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.